Hey everyone, welcome to another responsive design video. In this video, I want to handle the typography for our web page. This is part of a series of videos that I'm calling Putting It All Together, where we are making a responsive web page from ground up. We started with the HTML, and we're going to end with a nice design that responds to different viewports with things like fluid type, responsive images, media queries with breakpoints that allow the design of the page to change based on the viewport, using Flex and Grid. Hopefully, this will help you make your own responsive websites. Anyways, let's get into the typography. In this video, I want to create a fluid type hierarchy from larger than H1 all the way down to small, that each font will have, or each element will have a minimum and maximum font size, but then will dynamically grow in between that minimum and maximum size as the screen gets wider and smaller. I'm going to cheat though. I shouldn't call it cheating. It's not really cheating. I'm using a tool that's available to me. I'm going to go to the internet and I'm going to use a tool called Fluid Type Scale. This is a calculator website at fluidtypescale.com, and it allows us to create a series of custom properties using the clamp function that sets a minimum and maximum size and then sets a preferred size that will dynamically scale up and down based on the size of the viewport. I don't have to make any of these calculations. I'm going to let the calculator do it for me. So the calculator allows us to set up some baseline for minimum and maximum. So we're talking about the minimum screen size and the maximum screen size. I've set my minimum screen size to 320 because 320 is generally considered the smallest size screen that you're going to encounter on mobile. If there's anything out there that's smaller than that, we don't really need to design for it. It's just not really much of a thing. Maximum screen size, 1280. You will encounter larger screens than that, but we don't need to design for screens larger than 1280. We'll just make sure that it still looks good on those larger screens, but it just doesn't change as it gets bigger. All right. With each of these minimum and maximum, we can set a base font size, which is going to be, kind of the base that our calculations are made off of, and then a type scale ratio. And that type scale ratio is what's going to be used as a multiplier against the viewport width. As it gets bigger and smaller, it's going to jump up by that multiplier for each change. Okay? So we set up our minimum and maximum. You can choose those settings however you want. I encourage you to play around with them and see how they affect the overall scaling of your fonts. The type scale right here allows us to add a given number of steps. I've got it set up here with the default that the website gives us with 7 steps from XXL all the way down to small. That gives us from XXL down to small all of our values from H1 at XXL to H6 at small. And then paragraph and H5 are going to be our base. And then we can set our block quote, our strong M and small, or whatever elements to whatever one of these values we want. Variable prefix is going to set up how the custom properties are generated. This is our list of custom properties, and I'll explain these in a minute, but this is what's put at the beginning of the custom property. So it's going to take your steps along with your custom property and smash them together into one property. So font size small takes your font size prefix and adds small to the beginning of it. Rounding, well, it just tells you how it's going to round our calculations over here to the 2 decimals. You can do 2 decimals, you can do 3 decimals, you can go out to 16 decimals, it doesn't matter. If you go out to 16, then the browser is going to do all the rounding for you. If you go to 2, it'll just look cleaner and nicer. Include CSS fallback. I'm not going to talk much about this, but basically this is going to, if you check this, add some extra code on here so that this will still work with browsers that cannot handle clamp. I'm not worried about that for now. If you were to design a professional website that you wanted to work on every single browser out there available, even old legacy browsers, then you'd want to use this. Otherwise, we don't care. I'm not going to explain it in this video. That's for, if you want to learn about that stuff, you go do that on your own time. And the rest of these, I'm not terribly concerned about right now. Down here is a preview of our type scale. So this is what my default type scale is going to look like when the screen size is 1536 pixels wide. Let's see what it looks like at 1280. Oops, 1280. This is our maximum size. It'll never get bigger than this. So if I scale this up above there, you can see it doesn't grow. But when I hit 1280 and I start scrolling over to the left, you can see it start to shrink. And you can see that the larger fonts are kind of shrinking down at a little bit higher scale rate than the smaller ones. And then when I get down to 320, it stops getting smaller. So you can see I've set your maximum size or your minimum size and your maximum size. But in between those, our fonts scale fluidly up and down pretty nicely. And I think at every different viewport width, it looks pretty nice. Okay. So let's see how we can apply this into our CSS. Right, let's go up to the top. Right here, we've got our list of custom properties that's generated based on all of these values in the calculator. These custom properties use clamp to set the value. Remember, clamp is a function that allows us to offer 3 arguments into the function: a minimum value, a maximum value, and a preferred value. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at those 3 values and it'll return 1. It's always going to default to the preferred value, the center argument here, if it can. If that center argument ever goes above the maximum, it stays at maximum. If it ever goes below the minimum, it stays at the minimum. So let's look at our font size small clamp value. What it's doing is going 0.15% of the view width plus 0.77 rem. This is the preferred size. So it's going to look at the view width, and the view width talks about the screen size. As it gets larger, that view width is going to get higher. As it gets smaller, the view width will get smaller. This is what allows it to scale and grow. So it's taking that percentage, that fraction of the view width, and adding on to it a base size. And the base size is 0.77 rem. So roughly 3/4 of a rem is going to be the base size. And then we're adding that scaling value of the view width onto it. If that value ever gets above 0.89 rem, it stops at 0.89 rem. If it ever gets below 0.8 rem, it stops at 0.8 rem. So you can see that is taking place right here. As you see it scaling up and down, that's that preferred value, getting higher and lower, returning higher and lower from the clamp based on the view width. When it stops, that's that minimum value on the clamp. When it stops on the right side, that's the maximum value on the clamp that you're seeing. But as it grows and shrinks fluidly, that's that preferred size that's getting higher and lower based on that preferred value that's a multiplier of the view width. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy all these custom properties. I'm not going to write them myself. Once again, use the tools that you have at your disposal. As long as you understand how to use those tools, go for it. So I'll copy these, and I'm going to put them into my CSS. So my style sheet is right here, and I've added a style rule up at the top. I'm putting all my typography styles right up at the top, and then I've added a style rule for :root. Think back to those typography videos that we did before. :root is a pseudo class selector that's going to look at the HTML and see what the root element is. The root element is the one that's wrapping everything up. So if we look at my HTML, or the one that we've been doing, HTML element is the one that wraps everything up. That's our root element. So our CSS is going to target the HTML element when it uses the pseudo class selector for root. All right? We're going to put our custom properties in the root as we've done before. That allows them to be available everywhere within our markup. Okay? So now I've got a series of variables that I can use to apply anywhere. Now I'm going to set up my type hierarchy here. I'm going to go H1, H2, H3, all the way down to H6. I'm going to add paragraph to H5. So I'm going to do H5 comma paragraph because they're going to be the same size. And I'm going to go H3 comma block quote because I think I'm going to have my block quote and my H3 the same size. Then I'm going to go H6 comma small to have that the same size as well. So now I'm starting to set up my, my typography hierarchy here. For H1, I said that I wanted to use the double XL. So what I do for this is I'll use the font size property, and then I'm going to use the var function. Remember, the way custom properties are used is we define them in the root using the two dashes, a name, a colon, and then a value. And then we can use this name, font size small, or I'm not using small, I'm using double XL, font size double XL, and put it into the var. And what this does, this var function, is going to look into this variable or this custom property and find its value and return it to this place. So in this case, it's going to look at this value that's clamped and it's going to return it to this place right here. All right? So what's going to happen is as the screen gets bigger and smaller, it's going to reassess what this double XL value is going to be. It's going to return it to this place and it's going to refresh the screen and we'll see that H1 getting bigger and smaller. I'm just going to copy this and paste it into all of my others and then change the values when I get it all pasted. Right, so if H1 is double XL, H2 is XL, H3 is large, H4 is medium, I think it was just MD, right? Yeah, MD. H5 is base, and H6 is SM for small. I'm going to save this and check it in the browser and see if it does what I want it to do. So this is our web page here. I refresh it, and sure enough, the H2's got a little bit bigger. The paragraph's got a little bit bigger. You can see the font size scaling up and down as the screen size gets bigger and smaller. It's very subtle. It's not changing drastically, but that's not what it should do. You may recall that the difference between the minimum and maximum value on my base and small is a very small difference. There's a bigger difference between the minimum and maximum of my H2, so you can kind of see that growing and shrinking a little bit more. But the paragraph doesn't seem to get that much bigger and that much smaller. Okay? So my fluid type is working correctly. Let's apply some font families to it. So if you remember back to the first videos in this series, I chose some Google fonts. I chose Calistoga and Montserrat. If I go over to my HTML, you can see this is where I linked to those fonts. I'm not going to explain how to do that in this video. You should know how to use Google Fonts by now. And I'm going to apply those to different elements in my HTML. So I said that I wanted my headings to use Calistoga, and I wanted my body copy and block quotes to use Montserrat. So I'm going to set up those rules right here. So my headings, H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, those are going to use Calistoga. So I can just copy this line right here, font family Calistoga, comma cursive, paste it right in there. And then my body and block quote are going to be Montserrat. So I'll go paragraph, I'll go fig caption, and block quote. And that's going to be the Montserrat. Save it, and we'll check it in the browser and see how it looks. That looks pretty good. I think that the Calistoga is a bit chunky for my taste. I might want to make it a little bit lighter weight. But you can see that Calistoga, I chose it because it looks similar to the Cooper Black that I used for the logo. And it looks pretty good together, but I want it to be a little bit finer. So I'm going to set the font weight to, I'm going to start with 100 because that's the most lightweight value. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to keep it at that. Now, when I look at my web page, it looks pretty all right. There's a lot that needs to be done with design, but I'm missing the font on the links. So I will add a to this as well. And there we go. Now the links also have the Montserrat. Well, there you have it. This is all the typography that I'm going to do in this video. You can see that my web page is not nearly done. There's still the step of making the images responsive. We're going to do that in the next video. And then there's going to just be some final steps of adding some white space in there, playing around with line spacing, and just getting everything to look really good. And that'll be the last video in this series. So just a quick review. We created a series of custom properties that allow us to apply those custom properties to various HTML elements. And they use the view width as the preferred size. So as the view width gets bigger and smaller, all of those elements' font sizes get bigger and smaller as well. But we used clamps so that they have a minimum and maximum size. This gives us that fluid type that we're looking for that'll make sure it responds nicely on all viewport sizes. Thanks for watching, and tune in for the last few videos.